Good evening, comrades, hive mice, and all you some ghoulies lurking in the depths. Welcome to another shadowy broadcast from the darkest corners of Innsmouth Underhive. I'm Goblin King, your guide on this wild ride through the mysteries of the 41st millennia. Joined by a reckless crew of heathens, including, but not limited to, the Banshee of Necrodeath Synthwave, the Scream Queen, Emmy.
That's right, Gobbo. Tonight we peel back the layers of the Underhive's darkest secrets. From forgotten tech to the weird and the warped, we're going deeper than ever into the unknown. Places that not even Chac has plummeted to.
Prepare yourself, Hivers. We're diving headfirst into the ancient, the forbidden, the downright dangerous, and the stinky ookie dookies. I'm your light in the lost libraries of arcane knowledge, the resident archaeo-hunter and connoisseur of the weird. And I can confirm there's always something lurking in these tunnels, and we're here to dig it up.
So lock in those Vox dials, dim your glow globes, and stay alert as we plunge into the gathering shadows. Fear not, as we plumb the dark depths, I am your Sultan of Sanitation, Drew, here to make sure every piece of grimy, gory puzzle stays sharp and clear, scrubbing away the filth, so you don't miss a thing.
Welcome to 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio, broadcasting live from the depths of Innsmouth Underhive, where secrets fester and your next adventure awaits. I gotta tell you guys, I almost did the horse, from Young Frankenstein. Every time they said his name, the horses would go off.
Oh, yeah.
I almost put that on the soundboard so I could just reach over, and every time we said Madam Helena Blavatsky, just hit the horse noise. But it was kind of a pain in the ass. The soundboard's a little far away. It would have been a juggle. But I'm telling you.
And sorry, I got distracted because I was looking up Papa Nurgle Rule 34.
Wait, why were you looking at horse? Is the horse related to
The horse
Catherine the Great?
heresy?
No. Okay, so in the movie,
No, in Young Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein.
Frau Brucher?
every time
Oh.
they say Frau Brucher, the horses go off. Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know why that joke happens. There's probably something, but I don't know.
Okay, I know we need to get on recording, but I was in Russia in 87.
Okay.
And we had our minders, and we were going through. We were in St. Petersburg, and we had the tour guides and the minders. This was still Soviet. This was not Russia. This was Soviet. And I literally asked our minder / tour guide if Catherine the Great died when the horse that was fucking her fell on her and crushed her.
That's bad form, sir.
Yes, it is. I was drunk and young and stupid.
Okay, so why do horses always neigh for Frau Brucher and Young Frankenstein? The joke is that Frau Brucher is so hideous that she makes the sky thunder, causes lightning, and frightens horses.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's the joke. But yeah, I was going to get that like crazy whinnying because it just seems like every time you say certain things, there should be either allegedly, like the
You should
soundboard.
say that for like Madam. Every time you said Madam Blavatsky, it should you should get the horse sound.
Yes.
Just yeah. The horse is whinnying.
The horse heresy.
Look at those knockers.
Her eyes? They're
Knockers.
haunting. Welcome to Lorus Obscurus, episode 19, Madam Helena Blavatsky, part 1.
Yeah.
Just like the Goblin universe, this is another big one. So Madam Helena Blavatsky is kind of the introduction to, and there's a couple of different figures that all kind of exist in the same place. You know, Anton LaVey is another one. Aleister Crowley is another one. There are just these figures that exist in like early to late 1800s occultism that are really the foundation of some of the weirder occult occurrences in the early 1900s and some of the just absolute wacky shit that kind of forms the basis for a lot of modern thought. And we'll get into what we mean by that. But, you know, some of the things that we're going to talk about as we cover Madame Helena Blavatsky get into some of the weirder esoteric values and I guess corners of what has kind of become modern conspiracy theory.
And I wouldn't lump Anton LaVey in there. He's modern and he take stuff from these. These people were the founders. You're talking about
that's
Aleister
true.
Crowley and Madame Blavatsky.
Yeah.
Whereas he almost made it to the 21st century.
He's a more recent member. But before we dive into our episode, as you guys may or may not know, you can watch us on Patreon right now. If you go to www.patreon.com/Under the Hive of Madness, not only can you get access to hours of extra content, be it our old episode formats, which were 3 to 4 hours long, and we edited them down for release on Spotify to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours long, or our new episode formats where we actually film a specific Patreon exclusive podcast episode for you. But you can get access to all that extra content. Plus, you get to see it all in video. So you can see our beautiful, amazing faces. You can hear a lot of our blunders in real time. And it's an enhanced experience, if you will. You can see this absolutely haunting picture of Madame Blavatsky that I have up on screen right now.
She do be haunting.
And it's a easy way to help us let us know that you're enjoying the show. A lot of the money that we get, almost all the money that we get, goes immediately into either merchandise or improving our technology, making the show just a little bit better for you guys. With all of that,
at least that's what Ryan tells us.
I really just spend it on Warhammer figures. No.
It's all the microphones that we use in the show and stuff like that all have listening devices in them that go right back to the Greys, who Ryan works for.
That's right. Ryan works for the Tall Whites.
Wait a minute. Are we getting into the Ryan is a CIA plant already?
Yeah.
We're only 8 minutes into the episode, Drew.
Thank God they think it's you, Ryan.
Yes. Don't be a CIA plant, Ryan. I don't know what to say.
Okay, but on almost every single one of my Warhammer lore videos, somebody has to comment that I'm an FBI plant. That there is no reason whatsoever that I would know this much about the lore as a female.
Wow.
Because the federal government put me here to tell boys about James' workshop.
Why would the feds want you to talk about Warhammer?
Why would they know anything about Warhammer?
Tell that to half the hate comments on my social media.
My phone's ringing. It might be George Bush Sr. And that was a CIA joke for anybody paying attention. And anybody with that on their bingo card. I realized he was the director of the CIA 40 fucking years ago. But hey, what are they called? Anecdotes are relevant and current.
That's right.
So much like the Imperium of Man in Warhammer 40K, it can be hard to track down a lot of true facts about Madame Blavatsky. She deliberately provided contradictory accounts and outright lies about her own past. Also, very few of her own writings previous to 1873 survived, and even her early life can be questioned because of the nature of the aristocracy of the Russian Empire. We have gathered here in the next 2 episodes a brief outline of her life and a dive into the religion that she created called Theosophy. And this is a very occult religion. And the other thing that I would definitely warn you guys of, this will probably be a bigger trigger warning, or not trigger warning, we call it purity seal for next episode. But for those of you who are watching, or those of you who have access to the Patreon video, there are going to be potentially triggering imagery because Theosophy predates the Nazis, and the Nazis used a lot of Theosophy in order to justify some of their actions. So just kind of realize that she wrote this stuff previous to the rise of that regime. So some of the symbolism that might come up predates that. It's from earlier religions. But yeah, anyway.
Yes.
And there's a lot of stuff that we'll get into. We kind of very briefly already mentioned some of it when we brought up some of the earlier names, but the cult of I Am stuff that exists now, a lot of modern occultism, honestly, can be kind of tracked back to Blavatsky. We're going to touch on some Freemason weirdo stuff, a lot of Western esotericism.
It touches on all of it, I think.
This is a very, very foundational to a lot of this stuff. And hopefully this will prime you guys really well as we move forward. One of the other things that we do with our Patreons is we have our patron. One of the other things we do with our patrons, not our Patreons, is that we list out the future Lorus Obscurus topics that we are looking to talk about, and we let them vote on what we talk about in what order. So as we get closer to talking about things like the Montauk Project, or Majestic, is it Majestic 12?
Yeah,
Why is my brain not working?
No, you got it. Yeah,
You got it.
The Majestic 12 and some of this other alien conspiracy stuff, the more that a lot of this stuff is going to tie back into some of this earlier Western esotericism thought processes. There we go. I said all the words I wanted to say.
I like it.
Seems good.
So eloquent
Sometimes.
this time.
So that would be pronounced Helena Petrovna Blavatsky.
Yeah, and it's Helena.
Helena Petrovna Blavatsky.
Are you going to do all of the Russian? Are you going to read all the Russian? Russian.
Sure, I can do accent. I can. We can talk about the borscht. It's very good stuff.
This is going to be a rough episode. This is going to be like listening to us read a bunch of Ultramarine names. I'm just letting you know right now. But before we jump into the early life of Helena Blavatsky, Madam Helena Blavatsky,
Madam B.
or as she liked her friends to call her, HPB, which I don't know why. Emmy, you have a ghost.
Blavatsky. Oh
Yeah,
no,
yeah. You
you're
have
gonna
a
make me
ghost
share the
story?
joke, the ghost story with the whole class.
Yeah. Want to talk about the ghost cat before we jump in?
So I don't know if you guys have, for the 4 of you that would have been listening for like the that have been listening to the Patreon content for the last, like, I don't know how long, but Ryan, I'm too high. Just cut it here. We're gonna start here. All right.
No, you should know that anytime you say cut it here, it doesn't get cut.
Damn it. Okay. Beginning in the fall, when I moved into this place, I have been noticing that my little wax melt warmer will just like turn on and turn off at times that I did not press the button. And it like freaked me out. And eventually, yeah, I just got too creeped out. I unplugged the thing. But I realized that this is like almost like a poltergeisty kind of, there's like a spectral presence, okay? And we're speaking with a little suspension of disbelief. This is just, maybe I'm just crazy. But anyways, this ghost is definitely like a cat. This is like an AI cat ghost that Ryan's got pulled up here. The cat that we're
What do you
dealing
mean?
with,
I made this. I drew it. No, I'm
the
kidding.
machine made that. The cat is like very affectionate and, just like a normal cat-sized cat. And it like rubs up on your ankles sometimes, and you'll be like, "Oh, hi, Nugget." Nope, Nugget's all the way on the other side of the room. Oh, fuck. The other day I saw like a black cat out of the corner of my eye, like around where Nugget's food is, and I'm like, "Oh no. There's the fucking cat ghost. There it is." Anyways, the update to the cat ghost saga. Just filling you guys into where it was.
Yeah, okay.
I had a neighbor under me that lived in the apartment like right under mine on the first floor, and he had a black cat. And now I have a new neighbor who's in that unit. Black cat, same cat. I swear to God, it's the same cat. Maybe it's just that, like it's 2 different black cats. Super plausible also. But what if the cat ghost can like physically manifest on the first floor, but the second floor geographically it has a hard time inhabiting like its spectral cat body?
There's not a ley line on the second floor, so it's
There
difficult.
could be a ley line on the second floor. Oh, you're saying that there's no
On the
like
first floor,
spawning
yeah.
point for it to
It's respawn points on
Yeah.
the first floor.
Okay. No, that totally makes sense. But until you have seen a cat ghost or experienced a cat ghost, you'll be like, "Emmy, you're full of shit."
that's just ghosts in general. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking in our production meeting, but I used to work in a building that was pretty haunted, and um, I promise I will do a little bit of digging and sit down and think about some of the weird shit that happened to me, because it happened over a period of like 10 years. But I definitely have a couple of experiences I can share with you guys all. But one of them was a cat, and it was the same thing. Like we would hold LAN parties, like all night LAN parties,
Mm-hmm.
and several of us would feel a cat brushing up against our shin. And when you're in a particular zone and given your friends and death matches, you feel a cat a couple of times and you reach down to pet it and there would be nothing there. But we definitely, like several of us definitely felt it rubbing our legs.
Mm-hmm.
Probably didn't really help that a lot of times we did LAN parties like over the Halloween weekend and stuff like that. So there was definitely a little bit of telling each other ghost stories that happened as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'll definitely, it'll be fun to bring some of those up. I just want to do that. There's actual chronicled ghosts at this building, so I would like to do it a little bit more. Like I'd like to have a little bit of research done with it before I
Sure.
share anything.
Yeah.
Well, Emmy has done the requisite of sharing a ghost story in a Lorus Obscurus episode, and just like our last Lorus Obscurus episode ended up being 2 episodes, this one is going to end up being 2 episodes. Kind of as I mentioned ahead of time, this is really, really foundational to a lot of modern thought, I guess is the best way to say it. And this woman's life story is an epic adventure in a lot of ways. And how much of it's true, we don't know. But there's a lot of like, this would make a great movie. This is a great backstory. So we kind of want to do it all justice. And then, of course, a huge part of Madame Blavatsky is theosophy. We can't really, it's not a footnote. It's a very in-depth thing that has poisoned or manifested and changed modern thought. So
Yeah, it is the majority of what we're talking about today. All is from a time where there is not accurate records at all.
yes,
So we go off of her word and then what we can corroborate with that. And sometimes it's a lot of like, this probably didn't happen, but we have no way to say that it definitively did or didn't.
yes,
So,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. Well, with all of that in mind, we will introduce the subject for today, Helena
Doctor
Petrova.
Strange. Sorry.
Helena Pedrova Blavatsky, also known as Madame Blavatsky, was a Russian-American mystic and author, probably most infamously known as the co-founder of the Theosophical Society in 1875. Peter Washington would describe Blavatsky as a short, stout, forceful woman with strong arms, several chins, unruly hair, a determined mouth, and large, liquid, slightly bulging eyes. She was known for her distinctive azure-colored eyes and was overweight throughout most of her life, with an outrageously untidy general appearance. She was a heavy cigarette user and was known to have smoked hashish. Later in life, she was known to wear robes and many rings on all of her fingers. She lived simply, and her followers believed that she refused to accept payment for her teachings. Blavatsky avoided social functions and was as scornful of social obligations as they come. She was self-educated, and she spoke Russian, Georgian, English, French, Italian, Arabic, and Sanskrit.
Told you she was a spy.
Yeah, no, there's definitely
Yeah, she's
there's
infiltrating all of
definitely
those
things there.
elite Sanskrit strongholds.
It's the wealth of languages in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Madame Blavatsky would translate into 40K as an inquisitor.
Yeah,
very,
definitely.
very
100% she's an
easily.
inquisitor.
If you want to know Madame Blavatsky's story, you just have to watch the movie Doctor Strange or the comic book / movie starring Alec Baldwin, The Shadow. This is basically the story, right?
Or
Go-
like it goes through a lot of the same beats.
Go to Tibet, meet sacred mystic person,
Yep.
learn secret powers, come back, give it to the
Yep.
world.
As an
Great
agent for
success.
the hidden masters.
Mhm.
Yes, the Ascended Master.
Yeah,
The
but
Ascended
I
Masters.
believe that those stories are actually borrowing from Madame Blavatsky's stories. I think she is sort of like that trope of the Westerner goes to learn Eastern mysticism, kind of thing. I think a lot of that comes from her. for
Yeah.
sure.
And a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about, we just mentioned Peter Washington. These are a lot of researchers and scholars and biographers who have done a lot of deep looking into her. And we quote a few of them. We're not going to really dive into who they are because they're not the focus, but just kind of keep in mind, if we bring up a name of somebody who said something, they probably wrote a book or an article about her at some point. Most of them wrote books about. This is a woman who has many books written about her.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And a lot of them are really bad and speculative and
Yes. Well, and a lot of them admit that a lot of their information is speculative because they don't. We'll get into why. But, Drew kind of already hit a little bit of it on the head. This is just not a time period. We take a lot of things for granted now because we have the internet. We have the 24-hour news cycle. These were not things that existed in the early 1800s at all.
Yeah.
Biographer Marion Mead referred to her as an eccentric who abided by no rules except for her own, someone who had utter disregard for Victorian codes of morality. Mead believed that Blavatsky perceived herself as a Masonic figure whose purpose was to save the world by promoting theosophy. Madame Blavatsky embodied Gary Lachman's so-called Russian traits, an intense devotion to spiritual truth combined with a profound, contradictory character. She was a persuasive storyteller, able to capture those around her even through her self-absorbed, egotistical nature. The religious studies scholar Bruce F. Campbell noted that she had been a strong-willed and independent child, and the harsh environment of her childhood might have resulted in her difficulty in controlling her temper and her tendency to swear.
Oh.
In his opinion, she represented an archetypical charismatic leader. And a lot of the things that all of these people identified, down to like good storyteller, being self-absorbed and narcissistic, all of these are things that like pick a cult leader. L. Ron Hubbard is a great example. Charles Manson is a great example. These are all people who didn't really follow the rules, but were incredibly charismatic and were really into themselves.
Yeah.
And I realize I only brought up 2 cult leaders, but like Jim Jones is in there.
The Heaven's Gate guy.
Yeah. Marshall Applegate, Applegate.
yeah.
One of those.
Yeah, he was Heaven's Gate.
Mm-hmm.
This charismatic leader that is incredibly self-absorbed. And that's kind of why they're charismatic. They're charismatic because they are so narcissistic. They're so high on their own supply that they're very good at getting other people to be excited about their bullshit.
Yeah, the Mother God cult.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
like right up until the lady killed herself. Essentially, like she drank herself to death, right? Like she died from.
That's the colloidal silver lady, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the colloidal silver
Mother
didn't kill
God.
her. It was essentially
It was the
the
cloud
alcoholism.
spaceships, Drew.
excuse me, the cloud spaceships. Yeah, she was living on almost exclusively alcohol at that point. She wasn't eating any food or anything, and that had been going on for months. And she essentially had some like very severe eating disorder and severe alcoholism, and so she refused to eat and would only drink. And what that does to the body is pretty rough. And eventually it killed her, quite sadly. And she never got the help that she needed because she was God. So it didn't matter. And she was going to ascend. So like there was no active work to heal or help her in that regard. No, she was never taken to a hospital or seen a medical professional because they didn't believe in that because this is God. How can a lowly doctor fix God? So.
Well, and that's a very stereotypical or prototypical cult of I am or religion of I am.
Yeah.
And again, it goes right back to theosophy. We'll talk a little bit more about the I am phenomenon in theosophy later, but the Teal Swan is another one. You're talking about like modern occultism, the TikTok, YouTube superstar Teal Swan is another one of these like cult of I am personality people. Who's the one that killed her kids because they were zombies? It all happened over
I missed
COVID. I
this one.
cannot remember the name of this lady for the life of me. But
Is
yeah,
this
it's
the
really
lady from Idaho?
Midwest. Yeah, it's Midwest gal. It's like Utah
I think
area.
it's Idaho, and she married the guy, and then like went to Hawaii, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Ah.
Oh my god. But yeah, he was like some kind of LDS cult
And like
leader.
it's Lori Vallow.
Lori
It's literally
Vallow,
in the news
yeah.
right now. Jeff Daybell and Lori Vallow. That was
That's
their
it.
yeah.
Jeff Daybell. Yeah.
They're another one
She's
of these
not a
like
good
mixture.
person.
No.
And I think tried to murder. I
Her
think she
husband.
tried to murder her stepdaughter as well.
Yeah. There's just a lot of and it all comes back to we're touching on the thought virus, if you will, that led to a lot of these like modern corrupting chaos magic thought constructs, I guess.
Mhm.
Blavatsky's sexuality has also been an issue of heavy dispute, with many biographers believing that she remained celibate through her entire life. Biographer Peter Washington believed that she hated sex with her own sort of passion. In later life, she claimed to be a virgin, although she had been married to 2 men during her lifetime. The Theosophical Society promoted celibacy in its early years, even within marriage. Others have suggested that she may have been a lesbian or a transvestite due to early accounts in which she traveled while dressed in a masculine nature. Mead believed that Blavatsky had, with few exceptions, been contemptuous of other women. While this may have been the result of general societal misogyny at the time, it may have also reflected that Blavatsky had been jilted by other women. And this is just a theory. I'm bringing it up because it's been talked about by a couple of different authors. If you do any deeper research into her, or you read any of the books by any of these people that we mentioned, it is going to get brought up. We're probably not going to, I mean, there's really no reason other than what we just said to focus on any of it. There are some weird relationship dynamics that we will talk about. But as far as like where she liked to stick it or where she liked it stuck, it's really not important to her story or to her character. But a lot of people are really obsessed with it. So there you go. There's the blurb.
Fun.
I will say this. I think I am strongly of the opinion that she was likely the victim of some form of sexual violence related to her marriage. And we can we can talk about that. She was, you want to talk about an age gap relationship, foreshadowing a little bit.
Every single relationship we are going to talk about today has a disturbing age gap. Just is the least to say. And a lot of that goes back to the function of royal society. So kind of try to keep that in mind. This woman is royalty. Like without a doubt, this woman comes from royalty. This is not some poor peasant girl thrown
like
into extraordinary. Yes, she walks into a field of bees.
Yeah. The bees are attracted to her because she is royalty and they sense it.
So Blavatsky would go on, as we mentioned before, to found Theosophy with some input from others in the late 1800s. This esoteric, philosophical, religious system draws on Gnostic, Neapolitanism, Hinduism, Neoplatonism, okay,
Platonism,
Hinduism,
sorry.
Neoplatonism,
Buddhism beliefs. While many would argue that it isn't actually a full religion, it is currently viewed as a new religious movement and as a form of occultism within Western esotericism. But before we get into her later life and the actual foundation of Theosophy, let's take a look at her early life. And I kind of want to know, guys, so I know what Gnosticism is. Actually, let's define all of these. So Gnosticism is essentially, and this is really, really boilerplate, we are not going to get deep into it, but Gnosticism is essentially an early counter splinter of the Christian belief system and cult that actually goes to an even earlier belief system. But essentially, like the Gnostic Bibles and stuff like that are like a
Gospels,
different interpretation of a lot of the first century, last century BCE, first century CE thought constructs. Now,
do you want the explanation from a religious scholar?
Yeah, please, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, can you define all of these? Yeah, define all of these in like 3 sentences.
To break it down, Gnosticism means to know. It's a heresy. It's a heretical branch of early Christianity that links to the mystery schools that were prevalent around the Mediterranean at the turn of the millennium, at the time that Christianity was arising.
So in a 40K sense, Gnosticism would be the radical branch of the Imperium or of the Inquisition, essentially.
No, they wouldn't be right.
No.
They would literally be chaos worshippers.
Oh,
They,
okay.
they,
Okay,
they,
got it.
they are literally
Literally heretical.
heretical.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
To give you a little bit more, like, Abrahamic religions, right? Pre-printing press, right? Like scholarly institutions, a lot of chaos is happening in those areas at that time. And we are slowly reaching a point where they're trying to get to a point of like consensus within those religions. And they've been trying to do that for the last 500 years. Things are ramping up now as there's more sort of like industrialization around the creation of things like, scrolls and things like that.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, you have these pockets of people who believe different things, and you have like the Greek Orthodox Church that's trying to unify things, and you have like all that stuff is going on. You have like the traditional Jewish rabbis and stuff. They're all trying to unify things, and at a certain point, they're like, this doesn't fit. This book doesn't make any sense, or this version of it has this thing, or like that's where we get Lilith from, and so on, right?
Well,
So
and that becomes Gnostic.
No,
not all of it. Some of
it's
it.
not. No, it's Gnosticism is actually quite different.
Okay.
Gnosticism really comes out of the mystery schools, the Greek and Roman mystery schools, and it's about it. We're not going to get into Christology, which is
early magical thinking, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so it's like left-hand path magic, but like from the turn
to know,
of the
as in to
millennium.
know directly.
Got it. Okay.
And these are passed down by, these are secrets passed down. And it also goes into God is evil because God created the world. God created the material world. The material world is evil. The spiritual world is pure.
Got it.
And then you get into like the demiurge.
Yes,
right?
it's very, very complicated. But equating it to like the difference between Eastern Orthodox and Catholicism isn't there. It is a completely sort of mystery school separate. And
it sounds like its own episode.
Okay, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
They are the cult of the four-armed emperor.
Okay. So what is Neo? Well, so it would be that rather than the Book of Logar? Because it sounds like the Book of Logar.
Yeah, well, it is the book of, I guess maybe it is the Book of Logar. Okay.
So what is Platonism?
Basically, they're coming off the teachings of Plato.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Hinduism is...
The religions around the Indus River.
Yeah, it's the major religion of the area of around the Indus River, what used to be called Hindustan or the Raj, India, not Pakistan. Yeah. Pakistan is primarily Muslim these days.
Right.
And it's a polytheistic religion with strong unifying. Coming out of that is Krishna as almost a monotheistic force moving out of Hinduism. But in traditional Hinduism, it's a pantheon, polytheistic, lots of gods.
Gotcha.
And go watch some Bollywood movies.
Right. And Hinduism and Buddhism are probably the most understood.
Yes.
Just like
Hinduism
an image is conjured in your mind when I say either. Yeah.
Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism in a way where it rejects the gods, where you look inside and you can ascend to become, depending on if you're following the little path or the big path, you can ascend to become a bodhisattva, which is like a saint.
Okay.
Basically, it's sort of like self-improvement through meditation is the way of looking at it. And it's Hinduism is rooted in the caste system. Buddhism breaks away from the caste system.
Got it. Okay, cool. And Hinduism and Buddhism, you probably, as I say those words,
you've heard of those.
You know those in your mind.
Yeah. I would suggest that Buddhism is perhaps the most important for what we're going to talk about today, because Buddhism is the popularization of the notion that thought can be transformative.
Yeah.
And
that's a lot of what this is based on.
Her early life, her attempts to get into Tibet the first time, the first, second, and third time, which we'll all cover today, are very Hinduistic and Buddhistic.
But we're talking with her about Tibetan Buddhism, not the small branch or the large branch Buddhism or Zen Buddhism. all of those things are common in the West. We have some idea, and you think of yoga, and you think of meditation, and you think of all that.
Which can also be
Tibetan
very
Buddhism
Hindi.
is not that.
Mhm.
Tibetan Buddhism has demons. It's much more linked to
The word tantric practices comes up a lot.
Actually, that's actually not that's
In-
actually
in
not
the
Tibetan
fourth-
Buddhism.
In the fourth major school of Tibetan
Yeah.
Buddhism, because I went down this hole
okay.
today, established in 1447, they talk a lot about
Yeah.
tantric shit.
But Tibetan
yeah.
Buddhism is linked a lot more towards animism. It's spirits of the place.
Yeah.
So you have spirits in Tibetan Buddhism where you don't have that in the large boat or the small boat Buddhism, which are the major branches of Buddhism that come out of India.
Yeah.
So it's different. But of course, the Dalai Lama comes from Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah. But just like a lot of things, right? Religions, as they travel around, as they spread, they get directly influenced by the culture that they're landing in, and get those things injected into them. And a lot of Buddhism, as it travels sort of east into Japan and stuff like that, there's an active effort to distance it from that it becomes morely about a theoretical thought and enlightenment, and loses its focus on, or tries to discard the sort of more traditional trappings of like deities and the supernatural. Right, at a certain point, by the time you hit Zen Buddhism, they are purely focused on the aspects of like thought and meditation and enlightenment from an entirely internal perspective, as opposed to looking at things like, as you say, like in Tibetan Buddhism, you have like the like influences from like both the Hindu and the Chinese areas on either side of the mountain, and so those sorts of things are like ended up getting incorporated into that Buddhism. And if you've ever played the second Nathan Drake game,
Uncharted,
there's a bunch of that stuff in it. That's where we get like the myth of the Yeti and stuff like that. Like all that stuff gets sort of like worked
to be
into
clear, Blavatsky was not with Buddhism. She was not looking for peace and inner enlightenment. She was trying to find the black monks of Mongolia and the magic that they had and connect with their secret masters.
People were talking to her, and So to get to Helena herself, she was born.
This part I want to mention also is like it's important to note that this is one of the few things that we know definitively we have records on
about her.
There's a very big break that we'll discuss where all of the shit we know about her completely goes out the window and might completely be made up.
Yeah.
But she was born in Ekaterinoslav, which is now, and I looked up a pronunciation. Apparently, I did that kind of okay.
Which is now
Dnipro in Ukraine, and it was part. I'm sorry,
Dnipro.
Okay, thank you.
The D is silent.
Is silent. Okay, Dnipro, which is part of the old Russian Empire in 1831. Very important to realize. We are talking about the Russian Empire, so there is still a czar. The communism has not happened yet. Ukraine is part of the Russian Empire. So as we kind of talk about these different places and we refer to places in Ukraine and stuff like that, just realize the time period we're talking about. World War I has not happened yet.
Yeah.
She was born during a pretty bad cholera epidemic, and both she and her mother contracted the disease shortly after. And despite expectations, they both survived. So there's just kind of these mystic things that happen to her that actually happens. And we're kind of laying them all out. It's very important, though, to remember that the Blavatsky family were aristocrats. Her mother was Helena Andrianova Han von Rottenstern, a 17-year-old daughter of Princess Yelena Pavlona Dolgoriaka.
Dolgorica.
Dolgorica.
Dolgorkaya.
Her father was Peter. I'm going with Peter.
You don't say Piotr?
Piotr
Alexeyevich Han von Rottenstern, a 33-year-old descendant of a German Han family who had served as a captain in the Russian Royal Horse Artillery. Piotr?
Piotr.
Piotr. Yeah, Peter.
Piotr.
Piotr had not witnessed his daughter's birth, as he had been in Poland fighting to suppress the November uprising, and the two wouldn't meet until Helena was about 6 months old. So just to lay out, the first relationship we are talking about is a 17-year-old giving birth to a 33-year-old child while he is in the field fighting a war. It does not get better, folks. It does not get better. The relationships only get worse.
And in the best case scenario, she is an older 17-year-old, not a younger 17-year-old.
Yeah. But this is very, very stereotypical of the time.
Yeah.
She is the daughter of a princess. She has been married off to somebody
late bloomer.
Married off to somebody in a German royal family. And this is before Germany is a country. This is
not Germany.
He's still a German Han, but don't think of the country of Germany. Think of the people of Germania, essentially.
Right.
Helena could also trace her heritage back to a great-great-grandfather, a French Huguenot nobleman who had served in Catherine the Great's court. Now, what is a Huguenot?
That's a religious sect, sort of like the Puritans.
And they were chased out of France, right? That's how this guy ended up in Orthodox Russia, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. These were people of means, and her childhood was spent moving about the empire accompanied by a host of servants. When she was 2, her younger brother Sasha would die in another military town, which was so small that it had no medical services. By the age of 3, she and her mother moved to Odessa, where her grandfather, Andrei Fedyev, served as a civil administrator for the empire. It was here that her younger sister, Vera Petrova, was born. So again, this is a time period where kids don't really survive that often. She had cholera when she was born. Her younger brother died really, really closely after his own birth. And it's just kind of this cycle of the time period and the type of family that they are.
Yeah.
The family would later move to St. Petersburg, where Madame Blavatsky's mother would become a translator and novelist. She wrote her own works under the pseudonym
Zendaida?
Yeah, Zendaida Arva, and translated the works of English novelist Edward Buller Layton for Russian publication. She would remain in the city when Piotr returned to Ukraine in 1837 until he was transferred to Astrakhan, close to Russian southern border with what is now Kazakhstan, to become a trustee of the Kalmyk people in Central Asia. And the Kalmyk people were a ethnic group.
They're only Mongolians to live in Europe.
Yes.
Yeah. There are a good 40 plus different large distinct ethnic groups in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And like literally he became the trustee of this group of people that lived in what we now call Kazakhstan. So now we identify it as the Middle East. Then they identified it as part of the Russian Empire.
Yeah. And where you draw the line was like what is and isn't Europe, for example, is, as we know, largely arbitrary because Europe isn't actually a landmass. It's just represents sort of like a consensus. It's a consensus of Western thinking, right?
Yeah,
like
it's somewhere around Georgia is usually where they draw the line these days.
Yes.
Northern Mediterranean Europe was essentially like a community. So they considered themselves a unit, but like because it is a social construct where that line is for Europe is largely arbitrary.
Yeah, Europe's a political entity.
And Astrakhan is the chunk of Russia that essentially extends south of the current country and splits the area we're talking about from the area that we all kind of consider the Middle East. Mm-hmm. If you look at a map, there's this little chunk that comes down and kind of touches Ukraine, and everything on one side of it we consider Europe or Eastern Europe, and everything on the other side of it we kind of consider the Middle East. If picture in your mind, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Also, one of the things that's worth noting here too is that so she is her parentage is on one side is German aristocracy, and on the other side is Russian. So
Russian.
it's very common at the time that there was a lot of German, Russian sort of like aristocratic families merging, because a lot of the Catherine the Great, of course, was German royalty. And she had done things like open the borders to the Germans. This is where the Volga Germans come from, where they're literally inviting Germans to basically come in and colonize parts of Russia, right? So like, which then all goes very, very sour the minute the revolution happens. But
Oh, yeah, we just talked about the November uprising, which was like kind of the precursors to a bunch of shit that happens right before World War I.
So there's a ton of political instability that's happening right now. Like technology is not great. So like that's what we say.
Cousin Fight the movie is ramping up.
Yeah, exactly. And like so, like written records are not great at the best of times, and these are pretty strained times. And like the people who are poor are very fucking poor, and the people who are rich otherwise live a pretty comfortable life, and that's kind of what she had going on.
And Blavatsky is a comfortable life person. And that's important to note. Like all of this moving around and all this traveling that we're going to continue to talk about is very, very endemic of the fact that she is fucking rich. Not just rich, she is fucking rich.
Yeah.
Here in Astrakhan, the family became friends with the Kalmyk leader named Tumen. I think I'm saying Kalmyk, right? Kalmyk?
It's likely how you just said it was Kalmyk.
Kalmyk?
Yeah. If I'm guessing, this is knowing the influences, but I mean, like, I don't think none of us are going to get it right.
That's true. It's an ultramarine name. With a Kalmyk leader named Tumen, and Helena got her first insight and experiences with Tibetan Buddhism. It is important to note here that most of the women in her lineage were self-educated. This means that private tutors and real-life experiences have replaced anything that we, as modern people, would look at as formal education. It was quite common for a couple of reasons. One, this wasn't a time where women had a lot of rights or even an identity outside of their husband or future husband. And secondly, as we keep mentioning, this family was rich in caps. Like spell everything in capital letters when you say rich. That's what it was. This is before communism. This is an empire.
There weren't a lot of like schools.
Yeah. And schools didn't really exist.
Schools as we think of them didn't really exist.
But men often went to military academies or went to academies. So men had something approaching what we consider formal education, but a lot of women didn't. And like, again, her mother is a novelist and is translating English into Russian.
She's unusual.
She's self-taught.
Mm-hmm. And the other part of that too is that at a time, there's a clear distinction between going to school and learning, right?
100%. Is there a social reason to go to school? Or
So like if you were a wealthy aristocrat, you would be encouraged to learn languages and stuff. If you were a young woman, it would not they didn't want you to have your head in the books too much, but go study your Bible, go study or whatever that was expected. But going to school was something different. That was an institution for men to, as you say, to learn certain social things, and go to a school full of men and do butt stuff and have a great time, then come home and have to marry your wife and, reproduce as is your God-given duty.
Another weird little tiny link to Warhammer 40K. This is also the time period where the war games that continued to be developed into what we now see as modern tabletop gaming and wargaming was being developed. This is the era of men playing war games in colleges. Like men would legitimately go to college and then play war games, and they would be.
They still do that.
Not war games as in they still play the same games too. It's not war games as in like the 40K. Military playing war games. War games as in literally like essentially Napoleonic. Yeah. I mean, even pre-Napoleonic 40K. They were playing hoplites versus they were running these massive scenarios on sand tables and on big conference tables of how they would commit their forces to war. Because as Chac pointed out, you were either an aristocrat or you were dead. Like you were a peasant that would have to go fight the war, or you were the guy giving the orders, 20 miles away on top of a hill. Mm-hmm. Huge disparity. Mm-hmm. The family would continue to move around the empire, with Blavatsky's education being expanded by her mother in things like the piano, dance, and in learning English. But her mother's health had begun to turn for the worst, and after having another son, Leonid. Leonid?
Sure.
Leonid. I'm saying Leonid. That looks like Tyrannid, but with Leo in front of it. After having another son, Leonid, in Saratova in 1840, the family returned to Odessa in 1942, where Helena's mother would pass away from tuberculosis at the ripe old age of 28. So fucking spinster. I mean, just falling apart.
Which is younger than her husband when
Was when they got married. Yeah.
they got married.
Yeah.
Tuberculosis wrecking the world at this point in history.
If you want to like pull this lady's psychology apart a little bit, this is probably one of the first major sort of like traumatic events that she experiences. And
she was born in 37 and it is 42. So you're talking like 6 years old, maybe?
yeah. So like, and her mother was her only family that she knew. Her father was away most of the time.
Yes.
Right. So,
Yep.
And you can tell just by how she spins a story, right? Like she is constantly like weaving these tales, and you know her mother was in love with storytelling. So I would not be surprised if this was a huge blow to her. You know, what the hell is that?
It's one of the anime versions of Helena Blavatsky. I wasn't lying when I said they exist.
I didn't know there was a Helena Blavatsky anime girly. All right, here we are.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's quite.
She has her own fandom page.
Why?
Oh,
Why
boy.
the skirt if it's going to be that short? I just feel like.
What about the little Russian like diplomat dude floating behind her?
Some kind of wizard.
It's a Pokemon.
Yeah. Got to catch them all. Yeah.
He only says Rasputin, and then you know what his name is.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but under his cloak, he's pretty much all dong.
Apparently, I know this isn't the Rasputin episode, but apparently that's a horse cock.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one
Yep.
that's on display. Is
The one that's pickled
yeah.
is actually a horse cock.
Oh,
Interesting.
well,
Yeah.
that's disappointing.
Yeah. So after their mother's death, the 3 surviving kids were moved back to Saratova to live with their maternal grandparents. Here, the grandfather was governor, and Helena's education would expand with tutors in French, art, and music. As we kind of mentioned earlier, these are all things needed to prepare a young woman for marriage. She's not being educated because they want her smart. She's being educated so she can be sold off for a land deal in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, she speaks French. She's perfect for French aristocrats.
Right,
Yeah.
right. This is, however, where the first clues about her future seem to spring up. She was described as a petted, wayward invalid child
Oh my
who had a
god.
knack as a beguiling storyteller. I know, right? A wayward invalid child.
It's me.
It's further noted that she spent much of her time with lower class children and enjoyed reading to them and also playing pranks on all those around her. The family's continued friendship with the Kalmaic Tumen led to summer holidays where she would learn horseback riding and even how to speak some Tibetan. So I think this kind of, it points to she likes sharing knowledge at an early age. She likes telling stories at an early age. But there is this, the prankster thing makes me think of like, she becomes a cult. It makes sense. It tracks. It tracks.
Mm-hmm.
It's also worth noting that these people are practitioners of Buddhism, right?
Mhm.
Tibetan Buddhism. So this
The
is where
Kalmaic people are.
the Kalmaic. So this is where she's first potentially learning about this, and as Chac says, like the black monks and stuff like that. She would hear rumors and things like that about
She's
these things.
she's bouncing back and forth between Saratova and this Kalmaic like summer camp is kind of how they describe it, which seemed like a really weird word choice to me. But they describe it as like a summer camp. So like they would go and hang out with these people. They would go on like a chutzpah with these people every summer, essentially. But you're right. She's getting all of this esoteric Tibetan knowledge, and it's about to get weirder. We're starting to get wiggity. It's around this time that she claims she discovered the personal library of her great-grandfather, Prince Pavel Yalseyevich
Dolgorukov.
The prince had become a Freemason in the late 1770s and belonged to the rite of strict observance. And this is all stuff within Freemasonry. This is not the Freemason episode. We'll try to get there sometime. With rumors that he had met both the famous Italian occultist Alessandro
Cagliostro.
that one.
Cogliostro, yeah.
You have to do the pinchy hand. Or else it doesn't happen.
Mhm.
And the European adventurer and alchemist known as the Count of Saint Germain. And I would like to point out that even today, there isn't a good historical consensus on who the fuck the Count of Saint Germain was.
He's the Count of Saint Germain.
Like, it doesn't matter who he actually is. Come on,
We
man.
don't need to drill that down.
It's not relevant. It's not germane to the conversation.
There you go. This library was said to contain all sorts of occult and esoteric works that the young Helena was drawn immediately into. It's also around this time that she claims she had her first vision of a mysterious Indian man who she would claim she met in person later on in life. This isn't the only time that we will bring up some of these mysterious ascended masters that she saw during her life, sometimes in person, sometimes in vision.
How many webinars do you have to pay for before you can meet the ascended masters?
Well, you have to. It depends how many people are in your downline.
So you need to sell the Ascended Master program to at least 3 people. Okay.
Right.
And then once they've bought into
the tub of greens that you have to take with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
This episode brought to you by AG1 or Herbalife. Herbalife probably would have been better. We're making fun of multi-marketed.
I've gotten better, but I used to be like, I don't want to disappoint them, so I'll buy it.
Disappoint them.
No, 100%.
Do not feed the monster.
Them.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't give in to that shit.
Yeah, I had, oh God.
But they're my friends. They say they're my friends, and I just need to buy the stuff from them.
A family member of mine got into one a few years ago, and my mom, which MLM or which family member?
Which MLM, not which family member.
It was one of the makeup ones, one of the skincare ones.
Was it unique? I feel like we talked about this.
Oh, I know somebody that did unique. You know that's
unique
poison.
New York.
And then
I know it's terrible stuff.
My mom was like, "Well, I'm just going to buy a bunch of stuff from her just because I want to support her." And I was like, "Mom, just give her money. You're better off to just give her money. Like this is a trap. This will will crush her. She. It was heartbreaking. MLMs are evil. Anyway, but back to Madame Blavatsky and her cult. This is the beginning of her. And forgive me for people. I'm not going to say the N-word. I'm going to say the alternative to it because this is a specific trope that appears in films, which is the magical Negro trope.
Yeah.
This is essentially this her I see a brown man who tells me magical things is kind of rooted in this sort of very racist, very ugly trope, and it's kind of weird.
And all of the ascended masters are brown people. And you'll notice there's a couple, and Saint Germain may not have been a brown person, but you'll notice that there's a very famous ascended master who at this point was considered a brown person. I'm just laying that out.
Yeah.
Jesus.
El Cristo.
Cristo. Hermano.
I was wondering what the H was the other day, and I was like, I wonder if it's Javier. I realized that'd be a J, but still.
Yeah.
He looks pretty eerie in here, though.
Yeah,
yeah. Unfortunately, when you try to look up a bunch of this stuff, you don't get what they thought then. You get the interpretations of the cult of I Am now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. My favorite thing is, what do people believe was in the Bible that wasn't in the Bible? A white Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So this is the point in our story where we take a hard left. If you look at that meme with, do you continue on the path of history or do you take a hard left into La La Land or hard right into La La Land and there's the car going over?
Shit really pops off.
This is the point
here
in the story where we get into 100% her claim territory.
Either nothing from this point on is true or everything is true. And you just have to pick and choose.
Yeah, I would say if I had to make a judgment call after reading a bunch of this stuff, I would say only about 45% of her story from here on is even something that can be verified. Mm-hmm. And that's with more than a single secondary source. So a lot of times, we're a relatively research-heavy podcast. I mean, we're an edutainment research-based podcast on fake bullshit. But we generally try to find 2 to 3 sources on our fake bullshit of Warhammer 40K. Yeah. We want to make sure that it makes sense and that we're giving you guys real information. So, and in this particular story, there isn't even necessary one secondary source on some of this
just
shit.
to let you guys
Most
know,
of his are memoirs,
I
yeah.
first encountered Madam B well over 30 years ago.
She's been, she is
No,
a.
I mean, I personally, I have been in and around and reading this stuff since before I started doing archaeology, getting my advanced degree and all that. I sort of fell down at one point in my life. I fell down the rabbit hole of all this weird pseudoscience stuff. Probably had to do a lot with drug use and drinking.
Sure, yeah.
A lot of this was really fascinating, and
I came to it from a completely different perspective.
all of this stuff. And then I went on and basically disproved most of this stuff as I was doing my life since then. But I'm quite familiar with her. And although that we can roughly put her in some of the places that she says that she went,
It's rough.
it's rough because, but that's not unusual. She was moving through war-torn areas. She was moving through areas where people weren't carrying documents. She was wealthy. She could move around relatively unhindered. And it's not like people were writing this stuff down.
Yeah. Most of the secondary sources that we have come from her sister's memoirs. So in cases where her sister knows where she was and wrote about it, we're kind of good. But if we don't have that, there's nothing to back up Madame Blavatsky's story.
Yeah. So like the events that we know that we know are happening here is one, she definitely
she
did
was
marry.
born.
She was born. She married this guy at around the age of 17.
Yeah, we'll talk about him in a minute.
And then what comes shortly after is that she runs away from her marriage.
Yeah.
Right. And then has a bunch of misadventures. That's the part where we're like, most of this we have absolutely no verification for it. Such tall tales. Like she basically she casts herself as Forrest Gump in her own stories, where she is constantly bumping into the most important people in the world at the time, and she happens to be at the exact right time for the most important events. It's pretty wild stuff. Yeah.
And the other thing to kind of stress, though, and you guys both just kind of brought this up, is this is the 1840s to the 1890s. This is not a time of the internet. This is not a time where people were doing fact checking and source checking. You know, she didn't even write her own memoir. She didn't write her own journal. This is stuff that she's recalling after the fact in interviews or whatever. And it's also to be noted, just like the Imperium of Man in 40K, this woman is a known unreliable narrator and an occultist and a cult leader. And I very clearly linked those two things on purpose, because this is exactly what the Imperium of Man does in a lot of the lore we talk about. They're very much coming from this cultish level of leading the current Imperium in M42 from just this propagandized and occult-laden scenario. And this is very familiar. The way that this woman tells her life story and the conspiracy theories and the contradictory stories very much feels at home with 40K. She would be an inquisitor. She is an inquisitor again.
Just remember, just the simplest way to put it is she's the hero in her own story.
Exactly. And a lot of this stuff, too, is the model for modern conspiracy theory. And it can trace a lot of roots back to her and some of her ideas. And like this even gets into, as we kind of mentioned earlier, the occult beliefs of the Nazis. And if you're following us on Patreon, you've already seen a couple of symbols associated with her that are probably pretty contradictory. There's a symbol that's the Star of David with the Ankh of life in the center of it. And above it is a swastika. However, it is the correct swastika, not the Nazi swastika, first off. But still, the Nazis borrowed theosophy. And this is really important to stress as we tell the completish story of her life and paint how she got to theosophy and then pulled out what that worked on going forward. It's really important to understand this main character, as Chac just said, of a historical figure. And that's how she paints herself. She is the main character. The main character syndrome stuff that we talk about nowadays, Madame fucking Blavatsky to a goddamn T. Main character syndrome.
Very much so.
In her later accounts, Madame Blavatsky claims that she traveled to England with her father from 1944 to 1945, visiting both London and Bath. She claims she took piano lessons from the Bohemian composer Ignaz Moscheles and
Sure.
even performed alongside, thank you, Clara Schumann. And these are famous composers. These are like famous, and there's no verifiable fact that she played with either of them, but she says she learned from them. She then lived with her aunt, Ekaterina Yadrovna Whittle, mother of the future prime minister of the Russian Empire, Sergei Whittle. See, Sergei is an easy name, guys. Just stick with those. Before moving to Tiflis, Georgia, where her grandfather had been appointed director of state lands in Transcaucasia.
Not that it probably will come up again, but it's Tiflis.
Yeah.
It will come up again, so thank you, Tiflis. I don't mean to be insensitive to any of our Ukrainian listeners or any of our Eastern European listeners. I am just
bad.
I'm just bad unless it's ancient Egyptian.
I've had the benefit of like I'm just doing my best at reproducing what I've heard occasionally because I live on the news, right? So I've watched news 24/7. So I hear these names in passing here and there, and sometimes I get it. I remember it right. Sometimes I don't.
I'm getting some of these Russian names wrong too. Right too.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just put a big allegedly in front of everything from now on, so he doesn't have to say from now on. You don't have to say, and this is just what she says. This is all.
Especially the trip to England does not exist in her sister's memoirs.
Yes. Yeah, it does not exist. There's no indication that this piano lessons happened. And that's why we gave that big, from this point on, everything is her claims territory. Yeah. And I try not to say her claims a bunch, but it pops up every once in a while. A lot of the books that you'll read about her, if you get into really studying her, maybe this is what Chac's getting to, a lot of them are like every sentence is she claims. I'm like, guys, I know you said she claimed like an hour ago. Mm-hmm. You don't need to keep telling me she's making this shit up.
Yeah. Like, she did live with her aunt, right? But then like the England thing.
She definitely lived with the aunt. Yeah. She definitely moved to Georgia. Mm-hmm. Her grandfather had definitely been appointed to the director of the state lands in Transcaucasia. That stuff all that's all matter of actual record.
Yeah.
It's at this time that she became friends with the Russian Freemason Alexander Vladimirovich Glostacine. That's what I'm going with. A scion of the second largest and noblest of Russian princely lines. So the Gostelins, the Golitsins, the Golitsins. There we go. Are a very famous Russian aristocratic family as well. He apparently encouraged her to delve deeper into her esoteric interests. It is also in Georgia that she claims to have had more paranormal experiences, including astral travel and more visitations from the mysterious Indian man that she had talked about earlier in her visions.
And I know that this is, this is the 1800s. And when we say Indian, sometimes we can mean an indigenous person from Canada or the United States or Mexico or Central America.
No, this specifically means from India.
India.
Yeah. As my friend AJ and I would say, this is dot, not feather territory. To be clear, AJ is from India and I am Native American, so we feel we can make these jokes in public to make white people uncomfortable. At age 17, Blavatsky married Nikolov. Here's that Vladimirovich name again. Vladimirovich?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Nikolov Vladimirovich Blavatsky, a 40-something-year-old vice governor of the Irvanian province in the Caucasus. So this is it doesn't say he was 40, guys. He was 40 something.
Oh no.
This is a 17-year-old marrying somebody who is probably at the least in their mid-40s. She claimed that the attraction started over a shared interest in magic, and she moved into Sardara Palace, where she lived with him almost immediately. However, as Drew brought up, she almost day one starts trying to escape back to her family, and you just pronounced it correctly. It's not Tiflis, it's Tiflis.
Tiflis.
Tiflis. to which Nikarov eventually relented. So she kind of tries to get out of the marriage, and like last minute, like walking down the aisle, tries to get out of it because it's Orthodox and because it's already happening. It happens. There's nothing you can do about it. She moves in with this dude in this giant palace and immediately starts to try to escape. He catches her a couple of times, and it kind of always, it plays off like a dumb romantic comedy in my mind where she's like, oh, I was just out for a walk late at night or whatever. But at a certain point, he's like, bitch, you trying to escape, aren't you? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, well, just go. Like, fucking go. I don't care. And at this point, she travels back to Odessa with a servant and a maid to meet up with her father, who had planned to take her with him to St. Petersburg. So she flees by going with one of her servants and one of her maids back to see dad. However, she gives these escorts a slip at some point and bribes a captain for passage on a ship to Constantinople.
I bet
And
she
this
did. 100%.
yeah. And this started the 9-year nomadic journey across the world, which it is heavily suggested Daddy's money paid for. Whether or not Daddy knew he was paying for it is
that's
different.
fun.
Okay, I
they
want to
didn't
point
have
out two
credit
things.
cards.
One, she did not marry out of love, probably.
No.
Two, there was money involved. And
Yep.
three, he just wanted his money back that he paid her father for her.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also,
Or the other way
again,
around, or he let her go and kept the dowry.
Or he didn't think she was actually going to run. She just thought she was going to go home, and then she vanished.
This is kind of how this went, right? Like, she likely had never met him before. She met him one day in the parlor where they're like, and this is this guy, and they sat down, and he looked up at her. A man my age looked up a 17-year-old looked down and went, "Want to see a magic trick?"
Track the ball. That's your pants, sir.
Yeah.
I said ball.
So then, like then it was going to be like, I can show you, but we have to get married first, kind of thing. And then she because she does have her first wedding night, and this is probably a person who's lived a very sheltered life and has no idea what she's getting into. And this is a lecherous man in his 40s who's like, yeah, I'm going to marry 17-year-old. Like, it's everything about this is skeezy. And so then the context of her trying to run away, if you think about it a little bit more, like, this is a woman who is the victim of sexual violence, who is trying to escape from a person. She had no idea what she was getting into. She does not want to be there. And now she's like suffered some of the most horrific physical and emotional trauma that she can go through. Of course she wants to leave. And of course she starts inventing fantasies to sort of like escape the thoughts of those horrible things.
Yeah. Or she was married off to somebody that no one had ever met to secure a land deal in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
And she moved in with the guy, and the guy had no interest in her, and she had no interest in him. And eventually she was just like, all right, cool. I'm going to go back to hang with my dad. Yeah. And her dad was probably like, no, you're not. You have wifely duties. And then, he's
going to make me give the money back.
Yeah. You can come visit me in St. Petersburg, but then you have to go back to your husband. And at some point during that trip, she's like, fuck no, I'm out. And she ditches the servant and the maid to make her escape.
We should say that while, yes, there most likely unpleasant things happened to her in these weddings, we actually don't know.
No.
We do know that she got to Constantinople, and we do know that she ditched her maid and her servant.
Yeah. But all we know is that she married somebody that was a good deal older than her.
Yes.
But we've been implying that there was, abuse and all, and that which very well could have happened. I'm not discounting that. But we also don't have any indication that it actually did. Because like everything else in her life, there is nothing there.
My fascination, Chac had kind of given his path and fascination to Madame Blavatsky. My path and fascination to Madame Blavatsky came from kind of a different angle. In my own creative writing projects, I pull apart religion and esotericism and occultism to figure out essentially how to build fantasy worlds, how to build these components into fantasy worlds. I have an obsession with kind of like tearing down religious and occult ideas to figure out like why we believe what we believe. And that's how I found her. And I've read probably 20-ish years ago, I started kind of dipping my toe into all of this stuff, and it kind of vibed a little bit with my normal witchy stuff. But I want to be really clear. There is a huge difference between native belief systems and like modern Wicca and paganism. And it's way deeper than I feel like I can get into. But just realize that like where some of this stuff crosses over, there's a huge, huge difference. When I say that I'm witchy, I'm native witchy. I am not new age theosophy cult of I am witchy. I am not Wiccan. Like there's a huge difference between Native American medicines and Wicca. And yeah, anyway.
I could rant about Wicca for days. In my mind, it is
it's a fake, not a fake religion. It's a religious movement started in the 1960s.
It started in the 1960s, but by, rooted in basically was started by like a man, right? Like a lot of people claim that it is like this matriarchal thing, and it's gets really complicated and really ugly, and it's not as straightforward as these are witches. Like it is very, very, very different. The reason why I say that she's definitely the victim of sexual violence is when I say sexual violence, it doesn't necessarily mean he beat the hell out of her or something like that. She is 17 years old. He is 43. She's had no education in like social or sexual health. Like she doesn't know any of this stuff, right? She is a child. He is an adult, right? Like regardless of how much damage was done, there was coercion, manipulation, none of it's good. And she ran away.
If they had sex, 100% agree with you.
But we don't know that they did. I don't think they did.
My point is, at this time in history, actually during all of this royal stuff, there were several marriages like this where neither party had any interest in the other person in a physical way ever, and they never touched each other.
Yeah.
So that does happen, and we just don't know. There just isn't any information to confirm or deny whether, she claims that she was a virgin and she was never touched.
She does claim that much later on. Yeah.
No, we don't know though. I mean, it could be, how did she bribe her way onto a boat to Constantinople? Did that involve sexual violence?
Was the fact that she had no interest in men? Did that come from sexual violence? Or did that come from the fact that she had no interest in men? Was she a lesbian? Was she none of the above?
Asexual?
Was she asexual?
We just don't know.
I wasn't in the room, but she has all the hallmarks of a person who she was put in a situation where she was almost certainly going to the person would have to consummate the relationship, or the money would not change hands, right? Like that is the tradition of the time, right? There is
but we don't even actually know that it was a business relationship.
Yeah. And we don't know if it was, we actually don't know if it was ever consummated. And as the point you just made, generally those were viewed by multiple people.
Yeah.
It's a very, she may never have even married this dude. Like realistically, this guy may not have, well, he existed.
I'm pretty sure
relationship
we have some record of it. And again, this is stuff that's in, like, her marriage is in the memoirs of the sister, right? So like, there's at least some.
Well, and he existed, and the palace existed. Yeah. The likelihood of something happening or multiple cases happening to her are pretty good. We just don't know.
Yeah, and she certainly behaves like a person who has experienced pretty serious trauma, right?
Keeping up with the reputation as an unreliable narrator, she didn't keep a diary of any of this, and she never traveled with any of her family, which prompted Nicholas Godric Clark, a historian of the esoteric, to note that most of what we know about these travels, this 9 years, are largely her uncorroborated accounts. According to the religious scholar Bruce F. Campbell, there was no reliable account of about the next 25 years of her life. So one guy says 9 years are bullshit. Another guy says 25 years are bullshit. Biographer Peter Washington said myth and reality begin to merge seamlessly at this point in Madame Blavatsky's biography. According to her, she saved a Hungarian opera singer, Agrardi Metrovic, from being murdered and befriended him in Constantinople. She also met Countess Sofia Kiselyova, thank you, with whom she toured Greece, Eastern Europe, and Egypt. In Cairo, she met the American Albert Rawson, who wrote extensively about the Middle East, and together they went to a Coptic magician named Pylios Metamon. This gets more into
Wow.
that magical
Yeah.
black man.
Pylos Metamon, definitely a real person that did exist.
Yeah, you can tell because his last name as a gentleman from Egypt is Metamon.
This
Metamon.
is the beginning of the tall tales phase, right? Like where it's very obvious
It's
that she's
ramped.
yeah, like it's like, oh, and then I went on, and then I escaped my husband and I met this famous person and I saved this famous person from dying and I met this famous
Yep.
person and I was involved in this famous battle. Like at one point she's like there to keep battle with Garibaldi for the unification of Italy. Like it's just
Yes.
like it's like Forrest Gump shit. Like
injured in the battle for
like and then she met JFK and then she met Nixon and then she went to the moon.
Right,
right. Like it's like every extraordinary thing that could happen to one
Mhm.
person during this time happened to her.
Yeah, all these things also happen to Putt Putt. But he's
okay.
also a car from a children's PC game.
Oh,
Okay.
I thought you meant
Okay,
that
there
was
you
the
go.
name of the guy that was floating over the anime girly version. of him.
No, these are
It
all
could've
things
been.
that Putt Putt does as well.
I'm pretty
To a
sure
degree.
the guy floating over her shoulder was Rasputin. Although she would technically be older than Rasputin because anyway.
Yeah.
By 1851, she found herself in Paris, where she encountered the mesmerist Victor Michael before she returned to England. While in England, and this is literally what you're talking about, at this time, she claims to have met the mysterious Indian man from her visions, a Hindu she revered to as Master Moria. And El Moria is up on screen for you Patreon members right now.
Ah, yes, an Indian man, El Moria.
Here is one of the times where her own accounts contradict herself, as she claims to have met him first in both England and Ramsgate, according to when she recounted the story to others. However, in all cases, she maintained that he had a special mission for her, and she next would need to travel to Tibet. Do you have some mentions about Ramsgate there, Chac?
I thought Ramsgate was in England. It is. So she could have met him in
England
and Ramsgate.
I'm sorry, London or
England,
Ramsgate.
Ramsgate.
Sorry.
Ramsgate's not that far from London.
But I mean,
So-
England is London. I mean, it's the same.
Well, no, if you said London, I mean, Ramsgate is not that far away.
I imagine the way that the reason they're giving a distinction here is she's probably like, oh yeah, I was in the Spotted Eye in London, and then like in the next one she's like, yeah, I was in the Dragon's Tail in Ramsgate. Like there's probably some bigger variation, like
Mhm.
very specific places or pubs or whatever.
I think they're just trying to identify that like she's very inconsistent with the telling, and less so about like it's if a really extremely important thing happened to you, you would and I was here, like that would be a consistent part of the story.
It can also be the fallibility of memory. Is London far enough away from Ramsgate for that to be a big enough change, or is that literally like, I don't know, it was a field, like,
and we haven't gotten to it at this point in her personal history, but
she was either in a seaside resort or she was in London.
Yeah, and we're not sure, and she's not sure which, depending on who she's talking to. Well, and that's probably the important part. It changes depending on when and who.
I will say all of this because we haven't gotten to this event in her personal history yet, but it is all through this lens. This woman has severe brain damage at one point. Like she experiences serious head trauma.
We're getting there,
and so
it's coming up.
But most of this stuff is taken from her memoirs, which were written after she had that very serious head injury.
Yeah, in like 1873. She's recounting this stuff not only 10, 15, 20 years after it happened, but after several injuries.
Mm-hmm.
This is her Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego phase, by the way.
Yeah.
She travels towards Asia through America, landing in Canada in autumn of 1851. So she's told to go to Tibet, and she decides the best way to do that is to go through Asia to America. She's already in Asia.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I made the distinction about when we say Indian, because again, it would have been common at this time to refer to someone from like an indigenous person from the Americas as Indian as well,
because they were the same skin. And literally, the joke that the tongue-in-cheek comment I made earlier that AJ and I have used on people before, because a lot of people believe that Native Americans are just as dark as Indians. Not only that, but like the reason it's called West Indies, there's a lot of inherent racism as to why Native Americans were called Indians, is essentially like the.
Yeah. I love that she goes to Canada to go meet an indigenous person to learn their traditions, and she gets robbed.
Yep. She goes to meet this shaman. She gets robbed, and then she blames the robbery on the corruption that had been imparted to the natives by Christian missionaries.
Yeah.
So she goes, a Native American would never rob me. This is obviously the Christian influence, which is just like, okay.
I mean,
so from there, after getting robbed in Quebec.
Yeah. It's like, of course, she went to Quebec to go learn their mystical ways, gets robbed and sent home. That's about right.
From there, she went south to New Orleans, and then she toured through Texas, Mexico, and ended up in the Andes before getting on a ship in the West Indies and traveling to Ceylon and Bombay. I believe Ceylon is the correct way to pronounce
Ceylon,
that.
which is what is now Sri Lanka.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of these place names have completely changed.
And I don't think it was the West Indies.
That's where she got the ship. And the West Indies being
the Caribbean.
The Caribbean. Yeah. So she was she traveled down to the Andes, and then she came back up to central Mexico.
Yeah.
So she got the Caribbean and then went around,
and then sailed all the way around.
Or she would have gone around the Horn of Africa, which is kind of a little rough.
This is literally the where on earth is Carmen Sandiego phase of this woman's life.
That was like that.
I feel like somebody asked her and she just listed off countries and cities she knew.
So this is exactly where my brain went when I heard this part of the story. Was like, there's no Panama Canal at this point, so they are not going.
They got to go all the way around.
They're not going west.
No, the fastest way to do it would actually be to go across the Atlantic through the Mediterranean and then walk down from there.
Yeah. Because the trip down around the Horn of Africa is extraordinarily dangerous.
So is it around the tip of South America.
Well, that's where we get the Magellan's Pass on the other side, right? It wasn't until Magellan went through there and actually charted through there that we had a safe way to go through there. So this is a very dangerous trip. And I think Chac's right, most likely. But then again, like this is pre-Suez Canal, so
she couldn't go through the Suez Canal anyway because the Evergreen tanker was stuck in blocking transport.
Yeah.
You know, of
that
course,
would have been a good joke. Like 3 years ago,
if she was actually in the Andes, she just would have taken a
ship, from that side,
from Peru. Yeah,
literally doesn't make any sense.
The Philippines.
No. She went back to the British Virgin Islands, and she caught a ship from.
So, like, a huge part of the Caribbean at this point is under direct British rule, right?
Yes.
Places like Nassau and stuff like that. So, like, it would make sense that it would be a place that would be like easy to travel to and from, and why she would go back there.
Except not. And this gets into the next paragraph.
Yeah. She then spent 2 years in India claiming to follow letters Master Mora had sent her. With these, she then attempted to enter Tibet, but was blocked by the British colonial administration.
And I've read in several places that she was blocked by the British colonial administration because she was Russian, and it was suspected that she was a Russian spy.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, not only that, but at this time,
and there was conflict between Russia and the Russian Empire and the British Empire.
And also at this time, the British or also at this time, just like currently, a lot that the controlling power in the area just didn't let people in or out of Tibet.
Yeah. But as I said,
Tibet's kind of gotten the
what
short
I
stick
said
for a long time.
At the beginning about the Great Game. This is what was happening there with the conflict between, or it was sort of the Cold War conflict between the two greatest powers in the world at that time.
Yeah, the
which
British
was the
Empire
Russian
and the
Empire
Russian
and the British Empire.
Yeah.
And it all comes to a head in our favorite movie, Cousin Fight, also known as World War I.
Yes.
And I call it Cousin Fight because they were all fucking related to each other.
Yeah. They were all the offspring or the offspring of Queen Victoria.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They all had their feet in Germany to some degree.
Yeah.
And if you want to see a great movie around this time, look up The Man Who Would Be King.
Yeah.
And that's British colonial time in Tibet and looking for the lost city of
Angkor Wat.
What's the mystical city that's in the Andes?
Oh,
we talk about it later. Shantasay?
No,
It's on the tip of my Shangri-La.
Shangri-La.
Yes.
Shangri-La.
Shantasay is the real one. It's the real. Sorry.
Angkor Wat is all well, and interestingly, Angkor Wat and Troy were two of those places that were thought to be fictional, but they later discovered. But like Shangri-La and El Dorado is that trope of the lost, missing, enlightened, magical, wealthy city. They both fall into
which
that.
is where the Ascended Masters live.
We're going to get into theosophy and why Lumeria is a thing and why, we're going to get there. We're getting there. Once we're done with her early life and we get into her later life, some stuff that flies into modern conspiracy theory will just start popping off.
Yeah, they get their own special version of Atlantis.
After being blocked from Tibet, she returned to England, and she claims during this return trip that she survived a shipwreck near the Cape of Good Hope. And because of this shipwreck, she arrived to England late and faced hostilities, as Chac was just saying, because she was a Russian citizen due to the Crimean War between England and Russia. This is not the first time the Ukraine has been fought over. She then took up work as a concert musician with the Royal Philharmonic Society and sailed to New York with them. In New York, she met back up with Albert Ronson, and together they toured Chicago, Salt Lake City, and San Francisco.
Oh, this is the guy she went to the Coptic magician with.
Yes.
I think that was a euphemism for like something naughtier.
No. They literally just went and saw a magician.
Oh,
they went to a magic show. Yeah.
But here's the thing that's interesting. See a magic show. She does have these relationships with men or women where she travels with them for a long period of time, which is, I think, where a lot of the like, what was her sexuality arguments come from. Now, Albert Ronson, when she met him in Cairo, was a student. When she meets back up with him in New York, he is a professional. I think he's a writer, but I'm not 100% sure. I didn't do any advanced research on him.
Lawyer.
He was okay. There you go.
Lawyer. I think lawyer.
I'm going to go with lawyer. Lawyer sounds good.
She's involved with a lawyer at some point. So
in San Francisco, she parted ways with Ronson and sailed back to India by way of Japan, visiting Kashmir, Landaka, and Burma. Burma is no longer called Burma.
It's before making Myanmar.
Her second attempt to enter Tibet. This time, she claims she was successful, and she'd entered Tibet via Kashmir. And Kashmir is not called Kashmir anymore either. Like the region is still referred to that. But in 1856, accompanied by a Tartar shaman who was seeking to enter Siberia. He was using Blavatsky as a Russian citizen who would help grease the wheels for him to get into Siberia. She was using him to grease the wheels to get into Tibet. However, they got lost after reaching Leh, the capital of Landaka, and eventually had to return to India with another Tartar group. So they got in. She claims to have gotten into Tibet, or very, very close to getting into Tibet, and then they get fucking lost, and they have to turn around. They're rescued by another group, and then she's back in India.
If you're wondering why all of this is like, why can't she get into Tibet? Why is number one?
That's incredibly hostile terrain.
Also, British rule, right?
Yes.
There are British colonial forces that are involved, and as you mentioned, also terrain is very dangerous. And then so are the people. There are roving bandits and warlords and stuff going on. It is very unstable. It is incredibly dangerous.
Even to this day, I have been in this area of the world. It is incredibly sparsely populated. The people you do run across are relatively hostile, and the environment is constantly working against you. It is a hillier version of like Southern California, if anybody is familiar. It is very, very
cold,
inhospitable.
It's dry.
Once again, she returned to mainland Europe, although this time she did it through Madras and Java. At this point, she spent time in France and Germany before rejoining her family in 1858 in Pskov, northwestern Russia.
I think it's just Pskov. Like,
just Pskov, it's not Pskov.
I don't think it's Pskov.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure. Somebody Russian is probably mad at all this. Sorry. I don't have wall carpets. I have very little Adidas gear. I did drink a Zima a couple of times when I was younger. That should help. I've made all my Slavic jokes.
Do you drive a hatchback?
I drive a crossover SUV, so yes.
Close enough. Close enough.
But here at the new family home, Blavatsky claimed she began to exhibit her own paranormal abilities.
Oh,
Rapping and
boy.
creaking would follow her around the house.
She
And
used to rap.
furniture, yeah. And furniture would move on its own in her vicinity. She is basically claiming prepubescent female energy. In 1860, she and her sister visited their maternal grandmother in Tiflis. Yeah.
Tiflis.
And Blavatsky would reconcile with Nikifor.
Oh, age gap boy.
Yeah. Her
The
estranged
magic
husband.
trick husband.
Yes. And this gets a little hazy, but I'm going to give my assumption. My assumption here is that they split up and Blavatsky then entered a relationship with Andrigety Mitrogovich, the guy she saved from a murder in Constantinople.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
And the reason I'm making this assumption is the two of them would adopt a son who they named Yuri, who would die at the age of 5 and is buried under Mitrovich's name. And that's just more of these wait, which thread are we supposed to be following lines that she, tosses into a bunch of her own accounts. However, this kid is buried as Yuri Metrovich, and Blavatsky and Metrovich adopted him. And it was after she reconciled with Nikifor. So it kind of feels like husband one and a half.
Mhm.
It's also like this is a time where they're aristocrats, and like having offspring is like having like blooded offspring is extremely important. So like
Yes.
having adopted a child while not like completely out of like thin air, like it's typically not something that happens, especially when she doesn't have any other natural born children, like
Mhm.
and she's not actively trying.
Do you know
right?
what's
Like,
even more uncommon? Divorce.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, no
Well,
shit.
So
And that's the
we're
other thing.
assuming, but we're assuming that they split up and she married this other guy, but she could also be a polygamist.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or
Well, I mean, she
A bigamist.
literally is.
Bigamist.
She literally is.
I
but
meant
that
a
comes later.
bigamist.
Yeah, we do have
Yeah.
a written record of, because she does remarry some years later when
Yes.
she's not divorced, and it literally gets annulled because bigamy.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
and
yeah,
also
and there all sorts of weird, and that's why I'm just assuming that she was continued to be estranged from her husband, but in a reconcilable way, and entered into a relationship with this other guy.
mhm.
Mhm.
What that relationship is,
Yeah.
we're not covering.
Mhm.
While riding in Mingrelia,
Mingrelia?
Mingrelia. While
Yeah.
riding in Mingrelia in 1864, Drew, you just kind of brought this up a bit ago, Madame Blavatsky fell from her horse and her injuries resulted in a spinal fracture and her entering several months of coma. Upon her recovery in Tiflis, she would claim that she had gained full control over her paranormal abilities. With these new
Oh,
talents, she
okay.
then traveled to Italy, Transylvania, and Serbia, possibly studying the Kabbalah with a rabbi she traveled with. By 1867, she had returned to Italy via the Balkans and Hungary and spent time in Venice, Florence, and Montagna, claiming she had been injured fighting Giuseppe Garibaldi at the Battle of Mentana.
Right.
This woman's life is just the most epic action movie waiting to happen.
Yeah, again, Forrest Gump. Also, I have a really good friend of mine named Tad who did a bunch of meth and fell off a skateboard while trying to do some tricks in the mall. He hit his head, and he also now says that he has powers and can see the future. So I can see this. Yeah, makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely there's definitely a correlation between head injury and
Yeah, so like
Grandiosity.
events.
Yeah.
she
Oh, I
definitely
know. I always time traveled when I did meth.
exactly. But like this is why I say like this is the lens through which
Where'd all my
everything
time go?
is now, because again most of this is based on her tellings,
Yes.
and we do know that she did have a serious brain injury. Like there's some like records of this, and again verified by the sister, right? So she definitely fell down, hit her head so severely that she had a concussion and went into a coma for several weeks. People oftentimes, like even with the best medical care, struggle to recover. And
Oh, yeah.
she likely had some people like, I don't know, rubbing like oregano oil on her forehead and saying, you'll feel better, I'm sure. You know, like, so now she is trying to recount all these things. Like she is probably a narcissist and also has serious brain damage. And a lot of times those two things to go together. I got to imagine if you've watched RFK talking to the crows and eating the grasshopper, it may seem. I would expect that it's probably somewhat similar.
I mean, I at the same time, she did go on to write Theosophy like 10, 15 years later. And like Theosophy, while dense, is not necessarily as stupid as Dianetics.
No. It's dense, but it holds together, and
It's
is
lambda
actually
spread.
relatively well written. It's just
it's fucking dense
It's just
esoterica.
dense.
It's
I mean,
just
But like, there are plenty of people that have like brain injuries are pretty strange, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, you
there are
can
plenty
wake
of
up
people that are like,
speaking a different language.
yeah, there are people that are like perfectly cogent or develop a brand new skill after having. And I think this is kind of like one of the things she was keying into. But it's interesting because I think this is also the beginning of the. I feel like, again, she's 0.0 for the popular trope of you hit your head and then something extraordinary happens. Right. This is, I hit my head and then I had psychic powers, or I hit my head and then I could see the future.
The other thing is maybe she just needed a catalyst in her story for why she all of a sudden had psychic powers. And she was like, oh, a horse kicked me in the head. And I spent 9 months in a coma being healed by the Ascendant Masters. And maybe that never happened. Maybe there was never a horse. Maybe none of it happened.
Yeah, you also know what didn't happen much in the 1850s? Being in a coma for 9 months and coming out of it.
Recovering
Oh
from
yeah,
being in a
being
coma
just
and waking
fine.
up again.
There was no feeding tube. There was no nothing. Okay.
The Ascendant Masters guided her through Nurgle's garden and then Tzeentch's palace, and then Slanish's house of pleasure.
She sat upon the
Khorne's
skull
arena.
throne.
Yeah, she had to sit on the skull throne. And then when she was done with that tour of the chaos, she came back to her body. And that's kind of how I took it. That's kind of how I take this event, is more I needed a catalyst to make my story more epic, not so much this life-threatening thing happened. But if she did actually bang her head pretty bad, again, serial killer narcissism comes into this. There's a lot of stuff that comes to like psychopathy and stuff like that could definitely be linked to an event.
There's
like
a lot of people that have had there's a lot of correlative relationships between like traumatic brain injury and, as you say, the emergence of antisocial,
but that doesn't mean that any of this actually happened to her.
Yeah.
Right. But yes, this would be an
caveat.
Explanation of what is happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can definitely say that she has all the signs of someone who has severe delusional MPD, right?
Yes.
Like, I have not been in a room with her, but everything that is written about her and the way that she talks about herself, it just really seems like you sort of like, in a pithy way, called it like main character syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Really what this is MPD. This is narcissistic personality disorder.
Oh, yeah.
Like grandiose
100%
personality disorder. Yeah.
I mean, she founded a religion.
Yes.
She founded anybody who founds a religion has got to be a certain level. Like and
there's got to be, and there's some mania involved and stuff too, for sure.
So from Italy, she was alleged to have received a message from Moria, and she then traveled back to Constantinople to meet up with him. Together, they traveled overland through Turkey, Persia, and Afghanistan, and then into India, once again entering Tibet via Kashmir. There they stayed with Moria's friend and colleague, Master Kut Humi, near Tashalunpa Monastery. How would you pronounce it, Emmy?
Tashalhunpo
Monastery in Shigatse.
Shigatse. I like it how you like randomly insert letters.
A bunch of extra letters that weren't fucking there. And then my brain was immediately like, what the fuck, dude? An extremely important site in the second largest city in Tibet, established by the first Dalai Lama in 1447. Both Moria and Kut Humi were Kashmirians of the Punjabi origin. They were both from Kashmir and they were Punjabi.
Yes. Makes sense. Yep.
Kut Humi taught students of the Gelugpa sect. And that was the newest of the 4 major schools of Tibetan Buddhism that I mentioned earlier. And he did that out of his home. There's a lot of weird tantric stuff with it. Look it up if you want to know more. Kut Humi had spent time in London and Leipzig being fluent in both English and French, and like Moria was a vegetarian. So very important. Ascended masters are vegetarians. This will come up later.
Oh,
There's
okay.
also that is a tradition in some parts of Buddhism as well, right?
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of Buddhists
And
who are
the highest level
Well, and-
caste in Hinduism is typically the Brahmin caste is vegetarian.
a lot of the ascended masters both are Hindu, are Hindi or Buddhist, and in the ascended masters lexicon, essentially, even Jesus is said to
Yes.
have been essentially Hindi or Buddhist. Not
Fun.
Christian.
also
Okay.
the other thing that's going on here a lot. This area is packed full of drugs. Like there is a ton of hash and there is a ton of opium
hash. Yep.
going on all the fucking time. So these people are hanging out in the mountains, blasted out of their minds.
Oh, and
just talking religion.
Blavatsky chain smoked cigarettes for most of her adult life.
Yeah.
And was known to smoke hash. So I'm sure opium was involved. I mean, yeah.
If she was ever actually there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
While in Tibet, Madame Blavatsky claims that she was taught an ancient unknown language, Senzar. She then translated a number of ancient texts written in this language that were preserved by the monks of a monastery. However, she was never permitted entry into the monastery itself because she was a woman. Moria and Humi also helped her develop a control over her psychic powers during this time. She's a psyker now, guys. Among the abilities that she ascribed to these masters, there was clairvoyance, clairaudience,
Mhm.
which I believe is when you view other. So clairvoyance is when you view other things. Clairaudience is when you view other people.
No, it's just when you hear other things.
When you hear other. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That makes sense.
She can hear voices.
Far seeing, far hearing.
Far seeing, far hearing.
Yeah.
Telepathy and the ability to control another's consciousness, to dematerialize and rematerialize in other physical objects, and to project them through astral bodies. So not only
Right.
could she do all this shit to herself, but she could do it to other people.
I was right with you right up until the also I can teleport. Like, come on, man. It's like I can see the future and sometimes I hear voices and things from the future.
It's the dematerializing and rematerializing physical objects and projecting them into other astral bodies where you draw a line.
And the ability to control other thoughts.
Well,
yeah, like sometimes I can see the future. Okay, cool. All right. I can maybe buy it. Also, I can change your thoughts. What? Also, I'm going to teleport now. Like, you don't get to be Professor X, Mystique, and fucking Nightcrawler all at the same time.
She's being taught by the Ascended Masters, Drew. Come on.
Shit, sorry.
I think it's the astral projection, too, is more what she was kind of getting at. I think this is an old way of saying astral projection. I can leave my body and go view other things or put myself into other people's bodies as a ride-along. Yeah,
Which is like an important thing that I think like appears in like astral projection is like sort of a concept I believe is rooted in the
DMT
the Indus River religions, right? That's sort of like a concept that is then borrowed by Tibetan Buddhism and so on, right? So like I can see her sort of like transposing those ideas and then into her own thing.
She claimed to have remained on this spiritual retreat from late 1868 until late 1870. Blavatsky never claimed in print to have visited
Lhasa, like
Lhasa?
Lhasa Apso, like the dog breed.
So there's just so it's no H, Lhasa.
Right.
Okay. Blavatsky never claimed in print to have visited Lhasa, although many, including the account provided by her sister, would do so later on. To be clear, all of this relies almost entirely on her own personal claims and lacks any secondary sources. We said that up top, we're saying that at the end. During the 19th century, Tibet was closed to Europeans, and the few visitors who attempted the trip suffered from bandits and the harsh terrain. Terrain that would have been a challenge had Blavatsky been as stout and unathletic as she was later in life. And it's kind of assumed that the Blavatsky we see later in life was Blavatsky for most of her post-adolescent life.
Yeah, we just
because
don't
the
know.
couple of accounts of her are of a robust woman.
I really don't see how she could actually do all this traveling and still remain that robust, even with the help of money.
Yeah, she was either quite a bit smaller for a long time, or she did not travel near. She
Yeah.
took one of these trips around the world, not 10 of these trips around
Right.
the world.
I'm gonna say I believe the latter.
Yeah, I mean,
I
like,
could see it all happening once. I don't think it happened 4 times or 3
Yeah.
times, but yeah.
there's that old stand-up bit from years ago where the guy's talking about, he's like, you know what, I like the Leonards to Penthouse. I think they're great, but they always just push it a little too far.
Yes.
Because the story, so then I went to the ski lodge, and then I met this beautiful woman, and I bought her a drink, and then we went back to her place, and we did it in the hot tub, and then she smooched up all on my face, and then we did it on the bed, and we drank a whole bottle of champagne, and we did it on the roof, and then we fell asleep in the hotel room, and then we woke up, and we did it all again the next day. And you're like, no, dude, like, quit while you're ahead. You did it once, like,
Yeah, exactly.
and
And
that's
it
what she's
probably
like.
wasn't on the roof. Like, it's one of those scenarios, but
Yeah.
it wasn't the roof.
Yeah.
Hotels
Yeah.
get mad about that shit. I'm just saying,
They
Generally
really
speaking.
do.
that's a matter of public record, sir.
Yeah, because the whole thing is that then I went to Tibet and I learned at the feet of the masters, and they helped me open my psychic powers. And then 4 years later, I did it again, and
But
then
if
I
you're
did it
trying
again.
to sell, if you're trying to sell a religion,
Yeah.
and the religion is based on the teachings of the Ascendant Masters, you have to have this backstory where you met and studied under the Ascendant Masters.
Mhm.
And that has to be a journey. It has to be we talk about this all the time when we talk about 40K stuff. There has to be some adversity. There has to be some stakes. There has to be a couple of times you're
Mhm.
knocked off your peg or you're reset and you have to fight through it all again.
And
Mhm.
remember, this is a woman who studied at the School of Fiction,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
the first things that she experienced was her mother writing and telling stories.
I'm hitting you with the butt.
Yeah.
Traders and pilgrims from neighboring lands were able to access Tibet freely, suggesting the possibility that she would have been allowed to enter if she was accompanied by Moria, particularly if she had been mistaken for an Asian. In her defense, Blavatsky's eyewitness accounts of Shigatse was unprecedented in the West, and scholar of Buddhism D.T. Suzuki suggested that she possessed an advanced knowledge of Mahayana Buddhism consistent with her
Mahayana, which I believe is
Mahayana.
considered
Mahayana.
the small boat. They're the two major schools of Buddhism are the big boat and the small boat, and I believe this is the small boat.
Mahayana Buddhism, consistent with her having studied in a Tibetan monastery. So she had knowledge that she wouldn't have had unless she had been to Tibet at least
Right.
once. While this is a very hard story to pin down with any certainty, it is an amazing one.
Okay, it's a large boat, by the way.
And enough haze and half-truths exist that it might be all but 99% true, but it's unlikely. And we have few ways other than the writings of her family to verify much of it. It was just a different time, and this story was told by a woman who is accomplished in expertly spinning her own brand and legend. And it's with this and the end of her globe-spanning epic adventure that we will wrap up part 1 on Madame Helena Blavatsky. Next week, we will cover her later life and the foundations of Theosophy. We will also talk more about the links between occultism in our own history and the occultism of Warhammer 40K, and bring you guys our next Lorus Obscurus file.
I don't want to go too far into this, but I do want to point out that while the majority of this stuff was suspicious, when you read her writings, there's enough stuff, not about where she went, but there's enough stuff about the religion and the knowledge that she has that she puts in there that I think would not have been easily accessible if she just stayed in a library, reading in a library in London. I'm relatively sure that that she did travel extensively, and she talked to a lot of people in those areas to pick up some of the stuff. Just like the scholar was saying, that she seemed to have a lot of knowledge about this offshoot of Buddhism that wasn't common knowledge at the time.
And a city, Shigatse,
that was closed,
was not seen by Western eyes,
and nobody was writing books on it. In my field, anthropologists, back in the day, they used to talk about armchair anthropologists. And what this was is that people, oh, by the way, you like my nails?
Very pretty.
What they would do is they'd take travelers' accounts and put those together into how they built up the studies of these different cultures, which is why they're usually wildly inaccurate. The problem is, as we were saying, Tibet was closed.
Yes. Yeah.
And you weren't having these stories coming out of it at that time, at least not the sort of stories that were collected and would be coherently transmitted to somebody in Europe that then she could have picked up and written about as if she was there and have them be so accurate. That's some of the, and there are enough of these little points sprinkled throughout her works that you sort of have to start thinking at some point that she did some of this. We just don't know how much.
That's even a thing that we talk about in modern conspiracy thought. It's one of the reasons that modern conspiracy theory thought works as well as it does, is in most cases, at the center of modern conspiracy, 2 to 5% of that stuff happened and is true. In some cases, disturbingly large amounts of it are true, as we will cover when we get, if we ever cover like things like MK Ultra. Like, and that's the thing that feeds even into her, being that, you know, kind of this storytelling is the birth of modern, and conspiracies have existed forever, but the modern conspiracy thought bubble that we kind of live in, the thought construct we live in, kind of come back to this same thing. And, you know, as to what Chac is saying, maybe that means that she spent 5 years living in Kashmir, right on the border, talking to every person who walked out. That could be it. That could be the 2% truth or the 5% truth. Or
that's the key.
Or she spent some time in Tibet.
Or she got in for 6 months and then spent a bunch of time in it. It really, she's a fascinating, at the end of the day, she's a fascinating lady. We will get into her later life and theosophy next time. And
that's where it gets weird.
Oh yeah, it definitely gets
basically
weird.
All up until now is just a story about a world traveler that might be lying.
Yeah. We haven't gotten into
really weird.
We haven't started talking about lost continents. We haven't talked about the mystical libraries.
Like besties.
Yeah,
none of that stuff.
Joseph Smith, another good cult leader.
Yeah, you'll notice
was crazy.
You'll notice a thing that is common with all of these guys, which is like same thing. Like Joseph Smith also claimed to read and write a language that no one else could understand.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, he talked. He put rocks in his hat. Yeah, and he spoke to them.
Yeah, so like there are a couple of key sort of like tropes or reoccurring themes that we see here. Secret knowledge is one of them.
This ascendant master thing is
ascendant master things, or like a secret mentor. Another one is that the kernel of truth thing, which is like key to a lot of these, but also general misinformation and stuff like that, is you always have a kernel of truth, because the human bias is such that when we see something that's verifiable, that we want to then expand that out into whatever is chained off of that, right? So undoubtedly, within Madame Blavatsky's stories, there's got to be some aspects of truth there, and they are reflective of the reality at the time, and how much is fake and how much is real, how much is kayfabe. But we'll never know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but we do have to look through it all through this distorting lens of, this is a person who is not committed to telling the truth in any way. So we do have to be skeptical of everything she says.
And we're looking at it from the birth of modern occultism and the birth of modern conspiracy theory, because we're getting closer and closer to the wiggity alien shit. And we're talking about nuts and bolts, non-human entities, and what they may or may not be. And the reason is it starts here. And the way that it works into Warhammer 40K in a lot of ways is that this is the type of person, we'll get more into it next episode, and as we talk about her a little bit more, and as we get into our creative writing breakdown here soon. But these are the figures that the writers looked at when they came up with some of these personalities and some of these cult leaders. There's a little bit of Malkador in this story. There's a little bit of Euphrates Keeler in this story. There's a little bit of Logar in this story. There's all these little kernels that
old Hammer Emperor himself.
Yeah,
right. Old 40K lore. The shaman thing is so rooted in this. Right. For those who don't know, the origin of the Emperor was like that there were there's this like shamanistic
13
power,
shamans.
and there was always sort of like one, and they were sort of reborn until they realized that like they could consolidate all of their power into one being that could all be reborn at the same time if they all died at the same time.
That's kind of still it hasn't been clarified. They kind of said that's not true anymore, and we're like, okay, great, what's the new explanation? And they're like, we don't have one, so keep running with that. It's kind of
in classical ways they said, oh no, that's heretical knowledge, right? So does that mean that it is true?
We're
or
not going to talk about it.
And like it is
what if the Emperor is just the manifestation of a chaos god?
Exactly. Well, and the Emperor was apparently born on Earth in 8000 BCE near the Euphrates River, on the banks of the Euphrates River.
Yeah.
So there's implications that the first incarnation of the Emperor could have been Cain or Abel.
Oh, okay. Fascinating. I think the minions would have worked.
He was genetically engineered by Malcador the Sigilite in the dark age of technology.
Yeah, and he's
never existed that far back. He's an artificial being.
Or he is an artificial being that was created by the old ones and sent to Earth specifically to unlock our psychic potential so that we could ascend and then fight chaos. Right?
Fuck yeah.
Or he is legitimately just a propaganda piece, and there was a general who ran the Unification Wars and was the first emperor, but he lived a normal life and died of old age.
Yeah.
And everything else has literally just been
that is the
story.
Yeah, that is the like the Dread Pirate Roberts version of the Emperor.
Exactly. There's just a dude named Emperor. Every time Emperor dies, they pick somebody else.
They just find some other guy who looks like him.
And they're all custodes, and you really fucking hope you don't get picked to be Emperor, because you know it's going to end badly.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys have any questions about the show, or you want to get into contact with us about this weird theory that I just posed, email us at underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com.
At the beginning, at Sanguinala, there's this big cake, and they pass it, and there's a bean baked in the cake, and all the custodians take a piece, and they eat it, and whoever gets the bean has to be the emperor that year.
Oh my god! And you just really don't want to be the emperor because you know.
Well, you know, that's how that came from. You live as king for 1 year, and then you're sacrificed at the end of the year to appease the old gods, and so the crops can grow.
Okay.
They literally throw them into a pit, and the dark gods just tear them apart.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Emmy.
No, that's how. Honestly, if that was a show on ABC, if we could slot that in, like after The Bachelor, like we call it Beancake the Choosening, and I'd watch the shit out of Beancake the Choosening.
There you go.
So, by the way, that was a real thing.
Oh yeah, that was a historic. Yeah.
You can also find us on Discord and join the conversation about existing lore, world building, gaming, and much more. You can also find the show on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and check out our website at underthehiveofmadness.com. Check out our link tree to find all sorts of links to keep up with everyone in the cast's hobby progress and internet meanderings. Links and spellings are in the show notes.
Help the podcast grow by liking and reviewing us wherever you get your podcast fix. Our home is Spotify, but you can also find us on Audible, Apple Podcast, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, and more.
Support us through Patreon at www.patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. Join an awesome crew, including The Bear Mix, Andy Q, and Dan H, for access to extra content and a chance to snag some cool merch in our monthly giveaway.
Attention Underhive scum, feeling like you're running on fumes after a hard day dodging gangers and mutant rats? Need an extra kick to keep you one step ahead in the gloom? Then grab yourself a can of Red Squig Energy.
Feel the raw energy of a squig charge through your veins, packed with enough stims to jolt even a Crocs awake. The Red Squig, it's not just a drink, it's your survival instinct in a can. That's right. Stay juiced, stay fierce, and you might find your pouch a little heavier with every crack of a cold one.
Next time you're running low, reach for the drink that keeps the hive alive. Red Squig Energy. It's more than a rush, it gives you teeth. We are the dysfunctional miscreants of the Underhive, the last true children of rampant rebellion. 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio, reminding all of you Chemrats, Hive Mice, and Sump Ghoulies to keep those dials fixed right here. Same ratty frequency for a dose of the same ratty-ass attitude.
In the damp, crumbling tunnels of the Innsmouth Underhive, she heard the eerie wail of a child echoing through the darkness. Grabbing a rusted chem lantern, she descended deeper into the maze of pipes and shadows. Then the crying faded, and a wet, guttural voice slithered up behind her. "That's no child." The chem lantern flickered, revealing glistening scales in the murk as something cold, smooth, and keenly viscous slid lightly across the exposed skin of her arm.
Remember to read a motherfucking book. You had to put it in there so I didn't forget.
Yeah.
Don't loot the corpses.
All right, guys, have a good night. Thank you for joining us.
Stay clean, weirdos.
That's it. That's over.